You have Blake and Scott, two longtime fans of Star Trek, who are exploring the series as we've been through the classic episodes, talking Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and even exploring New Trek for all of the polarizing opinions that can cause. Scott, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I have been around Trek since watching good old Betamax tapes with my dad and TOS on reruns, and I am one of those crazy woke characters who thinks that News Trek is actually good in some places as well. And so looking forward to talking about all things that are Trekky in relation.
Yes, newsflash with this show, we do not have a problem with woke Trek, and if you do, you may want to leave or keep hate watching now.
Oh, and then we just lost half the audience. Thanks, Blake. It's the first freaking show. Come on.
Well, might as well be upfront about it. So we are here to talk Strange New Worlds Season 2. Scott and I have had the opportunity to see the screeners for the first 6 episodes. Now, we are not allowed to give any specific plot points or spoilers. All we can talk about is our first reactions and general impressions of Season 2. But before we dive into that, Scott, what did you think of Season 1?
I enjoyed it. I think it's, I'm not going to bury the lead, I think it is the best new Star Trek we've gotten. And to be clear, I was a slow like on Discovery. I thought it got better as it went along. Picard, I think season 3 is great, and the rest, okay. And I watched all of Lower Decks. I enjoy it. I have not watched Prodigy most of the way. But all that being said, I think that Strange New Worlds just hit it out of the park right off the bat. The reason why I would ever go back and watch Discovery Season 2 again is because of Captain Pike and the Enterprise, and the fact that they just carried it over and even made it better was great. I enjoyed the episodic television that was Season 1 with the little bit of sprinkled in serialization, character development, which made it nice. And all in all, I don't think there was a bad episode in the mix. I think it was probably, again, people may argue with me because they may like Lower Decks a lot, but I think this is the first Star Trek series ever to have a good first season. Like, maybe not TOS. I'll change that. TOS has a really good first season, but ever since TOS, I think this is the first Trek to have a pristine first season, which is amazing. So I'm looking forward to talking Season 2.
Yeah, it certainly did not have a code of honor moment in Season 1 of Strange New Worlds.
No, but we did have Dungeons and Dragons moments, which was actually fun.
That, yes. That was a fun episode.
I liked it.
I'm right there with you. I really like Strange New Worlds. I think it is probably the strongest and the best of the new Trek shows. Love Lower Decks. Now, unlike you, I did like Discovery. I had some issues with some of the creative direction, and we discussed that, and I think that was more the showrunner issues that it had in the early season of trying to find identity. But overall, I've liked new Trek, and to quote our friend over at Trek Culture, Sean, it's not so much that there's bad Trek, there's just ones I like more than others, with the exception of maybe one movie that we just won't name or discuss.
That's not Trek.
No, it's not. So, Scott, what are your first impressions of the 6 episodes we've seen of Season 2?
For me, I think there's overall, I really do enjoy the first 6 episodes of Season 2. I think there are some that are really solid and some that are, not as solid, however, still better than a lot of episodic Trek we've seen over the years. I enjoy all the characters still, for the most part, except for one, and we'll talk about it. I love seeing the Enterprise. It is such a beautiful ship. They've done so well, both exterior and interior, so I love seeing all of that. And there's not one episode of the first 6 that I would say I'm never going to watch again. All of them hold up, and it was enjoyable. And now I'm interested to see where we're going. There's one overarching plot thread, kinda, that's in here, and we really probably can't even talk about it yet, but there is something that is kind of bubbling up behind the scenes that has not happened yet in the first 6 episodes that will happen, I'm assuming, before we're all done with the season. So I'm interested to see where that goes, and honestly, that's the thing I'm worried about the most, but we can get to that when we get to that. Overall, a really solid start to Season 2.
And right there with you, the Enterprise is absolutely beautiful. The work they've done with the sets, and this is a point of contention with fans, right? They look at this Strange New Worlds Enterprise and they get up in arms and go, "My God, that's not the TOS Enterprise." But it's also been how many years since the TOS broadcast? Look at the changes in television, the changes in technology. There's things in TOS that are dated by today's standards. Looking at the communicators, we've got better cell phones now than arguably the TOS communicator. So seeing some of the changes in the visuals work, but I think it really does have that callback to that 60s aesthetic. The coloration is right. You've got the jewel buttons. You've got the tone is right. I particularly love that new bar lounge set they put together.
Yeah. That
is absolutely stunning. But, go ahead, Scott.
No, go for it. Keep going.
But also with the overall, the writing, I think you're right. This is some very strong episodes. There are a couple in here that I was kind of, not quite up to the par of the rest of them. But overall, again, like you said, none of them that I would flat out say, I am never watching this again through the whole run of it. I will say, I arguably think one of the first 6 is probably one of the best episodes of Star Trek I've ever seen.
And we talked about that we talked about that offline, and I agree with you. Without saying what that one is, I completely agree with you.
So you mentioned that there's a character that annoys you, and I think you and I are going to agree on this one.
Yeah. Can we start by saying I did not come into this thinking this was going to happen. I was excited. For one, we'll just get to it. It's Carol Kane and the chief engineer. I was excited to see her join the cast. I was not happy that they killed off Hemmer. I think he was the strongest character in season 1, but I was excited to see that they announced that she would be coming on. I'm a big fan of her work in the 80s and 90s. Scrooged is one of my favorite movies, and she's just freaking crazy in it. Whatever she's doing, she needs to stop.
Well, I think what got me as part of it too, with the character is kind of annoying, but what got me was also some of the writing, because they set up that this character had a relationship with someone else, and then there was the chance to expand on that and show that, and completely didn't do it. I mean, just gone.
We only signed her for a few episodes, guys. That didn't line up.
Yeah.
It's really what it felt like. That's what it felt like. It's like, oh, you didn't sign her on for this episode. Oops.
Yeah, it's like, whoopsie, didn't have her on the call sheet that day.
Oh,
so, I think that was a missed opportunity with it. That's the one thing I would say. There was a bit of a missed opportunity there. And you mentioned there's this plot point that seems to be running underneath, and it came out in episode 1.
It does.
At the very end of episode 1.
There's no mystery box. We know what's coming.
No mystery.
Yeah.
It worried me a bit, because I got kind of, when they did that, I'm like, oh God, we're going to go back to a serialized, this serialized installment thing. But it didn't do that. So I'm happy that undercurrent is there. It's popping up in the episodes, but it's not like, Discovery, where one episode leads to the next, or Picard season 3, where it's one big episode.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're still sticking with the episodic nature, but having that thread run underneath.
I want to rewind a bit, because I want to talk about that too, but I also want to say why I'm hating on Carol before I move on from that point too. When I say that whatever she's doing, she needs to stop, here's the key. And I can't give spoilers, and I can't give episodic stuff of what happened, but I can talk about her acting and the writing. And so here's the deal. She has an atrocious accent that she is putting on that makes it almost hard for me to understand her. And I'm not the guy who has a problem with accents. I don't have to turn on my closed caption usually to see what's going on. But there are points in the certain episodes that she's in where I had to turn on closed caption. It was that bad. And then her character has a background that is interesting and different, something we haven't seen before for a main character that I think could be really fun. Mm-hmm. And they're playing it off for jokes, and they're not even funny jokes. She has a background storyline to where she has, I'm being careful so Paramount doesn't kill me. She has a hobby. Okay. She has a hobby that comes up, and every time that she shows up, they talk about her hobby, and her hobby's not funny. And it's not, I mean, and it becomes a plot point, and it's just like,
the first time it was funny. After that,
and also they're trying to tie her in with all the other characters because they have, a lot of them have connections with her, and it almost feels like we need to have a connection with her, so we're going to say this person did this with her, this person did that with her, this person has been with her in this situation. And as you mentioned, sometimes when we know there's a situation there, she's not even in the episode. So I feel like it's such a downgrade from Hemmer that's a problem. But even if it wasn't a downgrade from Hemmer, I know where we're going. I know that the chief engineer of the Enterprise, by the time Kirk gets around, and we even had a little hint of that in the one of the episodes last season, is going to be Scotty. So I have Hemmer, who I enjoy and love. I have Scotty, who I love. And then I have this person who I really want to go away. And I hate to say that because I love Carol Kane as an actor, but whatever her decisions and the production's decisions and the writer's decisions, every decision going into this character was bad. Every one of them. But luckily, she's not around much, so it's okay.
Yeah, there is that. What I'll say, because it's funny, our other show, we mentioned Robin Hood Men in Tights the other day when we were discussing Rangers in Tights. And so, of course, being the Mel Brooks fan I am, what did I have to go do? Watch Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Of course, as you would.
But it was right before we watched the screeners for this.
Yeah.
So as I'm seeing this character, all I'm thinking about is the witch from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh, jeez. That's close.
It's close.
Here's what I'll say. As soon as she started talking, I thought, oh my God, I'm watching Rocky and Bullwinkle. Moose and Squirrel. It's that bad, folks. It's that bad. And it shouldn't be.
But other than that, I mean, overall, as we said, these are some very strong episodes.
Yeah.
They continue with the visuals as well. I mean, that's one thing we've commented with New Trek is they are not cutting corners on the visuals.
Not at all. I mean, just even the intro scenes. Oh my goodness, watching the Enterprise fly around in the opening credits. She's just freaking beautiful. But there are some episodes in here where this is a problem I've had with New Trek from the beginning, is there's no beauty shots of the ships. I'm going to ignore the cartoons because the cartoons actually do it for fun. But Discovery, Picard, except for maybe season 3 of Picard, they didn't care about the ships. The ships are ugly or they're so darkly lit in space that you can't even see what you're looking at. This Enterprise is the best iteration of the original Constitution class we've ever had. And I know some people are going to complain, I'm looking at you, Trek Yards, saying that, well, it doesn't look like it did in TOS. I don't care. If they had a budget like this in 1960s and they had computer graphics like this in 1960s, this is what she would have looked like. So I'm okay. And I can make it canon in my head that it's the same ship. It's just so freaking beautiful.
Well, it's interesting. You watch some of the episodes that they've upscaled into HD or even 4K, and you see the original sets. You can see they don't hold up. They just don't. Now, that's not saying they were bad. That's not saying they were wrong, but they just don't hold up, especially with, you've got widescreen TVs now. You've got, most everybody has a 4K or minimum HD screen in their house. They have to do updates to keep it looking relevant. Absolutely. I mean, if they were to do anything else, it would look like, a cheap period piece. It would look like, Mad Men trying to do Star Trek. And we don't want that. Well,
and that's the other thing, too, I've loved about Strange New Worlds from the beginning is, say what you will about Abrams' Trek, and I'm sure we'll talk about Abrams, the 3 Abrams movies as we move along in this show. But they decided that they didn't need to update too much. You can still tell in the corridors, in the crew quarters, on the bridge, obviously, that these folks loved TOS, loved the look of it, and they updated it. It's the same. Again, unless you can't wrap it in your head, I can see that the hallway that Uhura is walking down in this show is going to be the hallway that McCoy is going to walk down 10 years later. I can see that. I can understand that because they've done such a great job of making it look like it is TOS or pre-TOS, but also making it look like it was made on a 2023 budget.
I would say about the only set that to me does not align is sickbay.
I was going to say
they did a major upgrade of sickbay.
I was going to say, and this is from season 1, is the captain's mess, because Kirk never had a mess like that.
That's true. Kirk never had one of those, but yeah, but you can still look at the quarters though, and you see the desk with that desktop monitor there in that same TOS style.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see the color schemes. I mean, you can see where the pieces are, the mesh screens, all of those pieces apply.
There's a scene in one of the episodes where the pads are a plot point, and they use larger kind of clunky pads that we know in the 23rd century we're not going to use. But because it's from TOS, they use it, and it works for that aesthetic. That's the kind of stuff I really do enjoy. And
so what does... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the one thing that we've been bouncing around a little bit, I do want to hit one more point on the underpinning story arc, not really a story arc that's happening. Here's my one concern, and I'm not going to say what it is or anything, but again, as you said, episode 1, you're going to know what it is. They flat out call it out in episode 1. It's not a mystery box. I am concerned that the Strange New Worlds folks have decided that these are going to be the big bad for Strange New Worlds. Like, remember when TNG thought the Ferengi were going to be the big bad? I have the same feeling here. I'm like, no, you don't need this. But again, I haven't watched the last 4 episodes. It may work, but I'm concerned. And so that's one thing I wanted to highlight that we hadn't hit on fully yet. So sorry, go ahead.
So, and the one thing, and I think we're safe bringing it up because it's been in the trailers and the promo images.
Yeah.
Klingons.
Yeah.
This is not a spoiler.
No.
We're not going to talk plot or how they come in, but we have seen screen caps from season 2 of Klingons.
Yep.
And by God, they look like Klingons.
They do. They have ridges. It's great. And they act like Klingons, too. I think Discovery got better how they handle Klingons in the later seasons. But they still didn't really... I mean, they looked a little bit more like Klingons, but they didn't really act like it. These Klingons act like it. And more importantly, they act like TOS Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of... I'm remembering... Day of the Dove and episodes like that where the interactions with the Klingons and the crew, you have the same kind of interactions here, but they're still also got some more depth that we've built from TNG and DS9 and Roland D. Moore and all his work he did with them. Yeah. That's intertwined as well too, but it feels like this is 10 years before Kirk. It makes sense. Ridges and all.
And you can see the points though, like you just said, where we can go from the Klingons we're now seeing in Strange New Worlds and draw those lines now to DS9 and other shows of where we're seeing the Klingons. So I liked to see that back. I think Star Trek's finally finding its footing in the new era and realizing what they can update and modify versus what maybe they shouldn't mess with. Because, seeing Worf in Star Trek Picard as they didn't update Worf. Worf was the classic Worf look. Mm-hmm. I know some people were worried with that. Of how are you going to do Worf when you've already reset the Klingons over here?
Yeah. We don't care. We just don't care.
We just don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's much like how DS9 answered the question in Trials and Tribulations. We don't speak about it with outsiders. Now, of course, Enterprise answers it more, but at the end of the day, we just don't care. These are the Klingons the fans wanted to see, and they're done well. So... be okay with it and move on. There are other things we can deal with. The world will go on. The Klingons have ridges. They drink blood wine, which you see in the trailer. Move on.
So we see some other classic Star Trek things in this. I mean, we've got time travel this season. Which we're not going to get into plot points, but we will say there is time travel. Mm-hmm. You've got these moral and ethical dilemmas that the crew delve into through various points. I mean, to me, this is classic TOS writing.
Yeah, there's the writing is absolutely, I completely agree with you, but there's one thing I want to say for direction real quick. There is one moment, and again, we can't talk about episodes, but there is a moment where Spock sits up, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And it has the most TOS feeling that I have ever seen, even Strange New Worlds pull off, to a point where they even do like the kind of the comedic like do 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 like little piano cue that TOS would have done when it's, hey guys, this is going to be a comedy episode, pay attention. He does that and he like looks at the camera. I'm just like, holy God, that just felt like 60s cheese, and I am in for it. I'm going for it. So the direction too is great. But yeah, I mean, you've already kind of mentioned that there's one episode in here that will go down as I think one of the strongest episodes in Trek history. But the other ones too, they hold up.
Yeah, they hold up.
I do like that each of our characters again is getting something to chew on. Season 1 had like, you know, every episode had a main character that kind of was their episode, and one of the big complaints was that Ortega's didn't get one of those in season 1. I would argue she still hasn't fully, but she gets more of one in these first episodes, which I appreciated because I know her character is divisive. I like her. She just seems like the kind of nerd kind of person that would be on a ship just enjoying herself. And I'm glad that she's getting more to do. But every one of the characters gets that kind of moment or that episode. So I do appreciate that too.
And you mentioning the characters, they grow in this season also.
Yes.
You've seen growth from season 1 to season 2. And that's not something we've seen a lot in Star Trek before. We've seen shows go 7 seasons without character development, Voyager.
Poor Ensign Kim.
And, you know, you've got development. And I think one of the pieces I like with season 2 is you had that end of season 1 where Pike came to terms with his fate.
Yes.
And I will say you see a different Pike in season 2.
100%. Absolutely.
Because he's at peace with it now.
Yep.
And you see that reflected in the writing for the character through season 2.
I completely agree. And I think we see a Pike that is not only at peace with his future, because, and I actually like that. I like that decision that they made that we're not going to sugarcoat it. Pike knows what's going to happen, and that's part of his character now. But I like that we see that he is, as you said, come to peace with it, but also he is becoming more comfortable in his command in general. And he's able to, I think, allow for his crew to do more on their own and delegate more. And we even see that right off the bat. They're able to delegate more because he's more comfortable and confident in himself and in his crew. I said with season 1 that he is very quickly becoming one of the my favorite captains, and he's continuing on that trek in season 2. Although he still hasn't beat Cisco yet. But he's getting there.
Now, if Q shows up in Strange New Worlds and he slugs Q...
Well, it's a 60s aesthetic, so I want an actual karate chop is what I want. I want to actually like a full-on smack the shit out of Q. That's what I want.
If he does that, he might move ahead of Cisco.
I think so.
So... I will say, and you mentioned the one thing that bothered you. There is one thing in this season that did bother me that I didn't like, but I can't really get into it because of the rules we have.
You did say you had thoughts.
I had thoughts. And I will say, let me see how, I think I can get away with saying it involves Mbenga.
I know exactly where you're coming with on this. And it's kind of out of the blue, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a few pieces like that that are sprinkled in that just make you sit back and go, why did they make that choice? And I'm really hoping in the 4 episodes we've not seen that somewhere this gets explained and doesn't just get left hanging. I'm
glad you brought that up too, because I was trying to think back, because I've only seen Strange New World season 1 all the way through one time. I need to do a rewatch. But I'm thinking to myself, that was never a part of his character in season 1, was it? Because now it's like almost every time he shows up, it's like, oh, this thing. Oh, this thing. I'm like,
yeah,
that's new. Did you just need a character to be that? And Mbenga seemed like the one that fit the most? Because that's an interesting choice. So I agree with you on that.
I can see that easier switch to Ortegas.
I agree. That would make and give her more to do.
Yeah, it would make more sense.
Because Mbenga had a wonderful arc with his daughter in season 1. Yeah. Now give Ortegas a chance.
Mm-hmm. That would be my one kind of questionable thing was that choice too. But again, these are minor things. These are not like big things, and by no means are these things that make you go, by God, this sucks, I'm turning it off.
This is one of the strongest seasons of Trek, period. I don't know if it's going to be stronger than season 1 because I haven't watched it all yet, but I would hold this up to almost any season of Trek, new and old, because it's such quality TV, which is odd for me because I'm not an Akiva Goldsmith fan, but he's been knocking it out of the park with this show. I think when you give him something he enjoys, he can do it pretty well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think definitely giving him the material, but giving him the freedom. I think Kurtzman is still involved, but I definitely think Alex Kurtzman has taken a bit of a step back from the creative side of it.
Yep.
And is working a little bit more overall, just overseeing strategy side of it now. And I think that shows also. I think it also helps that, one of the things we commented on that Discovery struggled from was, Brian Fuller came in with a vision that nobody really cared for and was gone before the thing ever premiered. And then they kind of went through a few different showrunners trying to get that show stabilized. That's the only one of New Trek that's really gone through that. Lower Decks has had the same creative team. Strange New Worlds has that and it has a solid creative team. Picard switched a little bit, but I think that was they got their head out of their ass by season 3. I liked season 1. Don't get me wrong. I liked Picard season 1. Season 2, I fully agree with you. If you take the first episode and the last episode and cut out the 8 in the middle, perfect.
No singing required.
3 was fantastic.
I think at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to the last 4 episodes to see where we're going with this. But we keep saying where we're going, at least I do, but I want to be very clear. This is still episodic television. Yeah. Every single one of these episodes, you could take out and say, hey, friend who's never watched Trek, watch this. And it will hold up. It is not serialized, but there is a through line for most of our characters and for the universe in general. The one thing, Blake, and I don't know if you plan on talking about this, but can we bring up the Kirk in the room? Can we have a conversation about Kirk?
Let's get to him in a minute.
Okay, I'll hold.
So, because I want to talk about the episodic nature a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing I've also been enjoying with New Trek is not even just with this one, but Lower Decks has done this too. There are consequences. You can watch the episodes as standalone, but if you've watched them all, you will see something that is a consequence of a prior episode. Things have consequence versus you look at a lot of the older Trek that even when it was episodic, there were no consequences. There were no stakes to anything. Everything hit the reset button at the end of the episode. So that, when you're lost in the other side of the galaxy with a set number of shuttles and torpedoes and somehow have unlimited amounts every week. DS9 did the same thing. How many runabouts did they run through?
More than they had.
More than they had.
Although Prodigy did kind of answer that. The one episode of Prodigy I watched, it kind of answered that.
They did answer that a little bit, but yeah, but you gotta say it's everything hit that reset button. Versus now things happen, things change, but you can still watch it on its own. So I think for those people like us who want to watch that and see those through lines, it's perfect. But it also makes it approachable to a different and a new audience as well, who may not be familiar with the lore, who may not be familiar with all these pieces and these through lines, but they can still enjoy it as it is.
Yep, that's the perfect way to talk about it, and I think that's where this show is going to be so beneficial to the franchise. And I think I'm assuming this is what the producers and the executive producers see on this is the one show where I think the newbies can come into and just enjoy it. And then also I still think, and I've talked to some folks who are of the older persuasion who only have watched TOS. They never really got into anything else. Berman Trek and all that. They just never got into it. If you're a TOS fan, this is just a continuation of that. Except for, as you point out, there is a lot more emphasis on characterization than there was in TOS. But I think the stories are almost as strong, if not stronger, on some of these. Each one of these episodes has a solid science fiction or drama or comedy or something storyline that it follows throughout. And I will say, and I can't remember if this was the same with season 1, I guess I could look real quick, but I don't have it up, is it seems like these episodes are giving a little bit more time to breathe. Most of the episodes' runtime are, I'm going to try to be careful, Paramount, they're longer than a normal episode of TV. So it reminds me a lot of Orville, the last season of Orville. They were given the ability, okay, if you got a 60-minute episode, a story, go for it. If you got a story that's 54 minutes, fine. So they kind of fluctuate, and they get more time to breathe. And I never find myself checking my watch on these either. So they got the right amount of time to do the storyline that they're going for.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you're right. You don't really in here get bored at a certain point. Some definitely move faster than others.
Yeah.
But they don't slow down to a point of you're staring at the watch going, is this over yet?
Until the chief engineer shows up, then they do slow down.
Well, that's what the fast forward button is for. So you wanted to discuss the Kirk in the room.
I do because I'm going into the end of season 1. I was excited that they were going to bring Kirk into this because I think it's a fun little dynamic to look at. And season 1, of course, we had a Kirk that no longer exists because he was in an alternate timeline if Pike had decided not to go down his road that he was going to go down. So this is, and I'm not spoiling anything because it's in the trailers, we get Kirk back, and this is the real Kirk, I guess is the way to put it. I'm still not sold on the actor. I think the writing is stronger for Kirk in this season. But when you look at Shatner and you look at Chris Pine, both of which really made Kirk their own and really did a great job. I really enjoy Chris Pine as Kirk. I think he's done a great job as Kirk in the 3 movies. I don't like this actor yet. He's doing better in season 2. But he's still not Kirk to me, and that's kind of frustrating.
You know, I would agree with you because I had that same comment I just don't know. I don't know if it's the actor. I don't know if it's the writing. I don't know if it's the direction.
Yeah.
Because it almost seems like a caricature of Kirk and not Kirk himself.
Look, he's got a square jaw, and he looks kind of cute. He's Kirk, right? No.
Yeah.
That's not what Kirk is.
Well, the note I have on mine is Kirk has a certain swagger, a certain, brashness. Chris Pine nailed it.
100%.
He made it his own, but he nailed it 100%.
Yes.
Paul Wesley doesn't.
No. I'm thinking of the last scene of Star Trek 09, where Kirk comes in. He's just been promoted to captain after being whatever, which is kind of funny. But he comes in, he slaps McCoy on the back, and he goes to sit at his chair. And he just, again, he has that swagger. He pulls on it, he tugs on his uniform, sits down in the chair, crosses his legs, and he's the captain. And you feel it. And even more so in Star Trek Beyond, I'm going to ignore the other one. He's the captain. He is Kirk. This guy... And I don't know, we'll talk more about writing when we get into the episodes when we can, but I think the writing is doing better. There's a little bit more of an examination of who Kirk is and why Kirk is who he is. Wesley just he does not have the gravitas to be Kirk.
Well, it almost feels, I also made a comment because I was watching it and I'm like, God, this just feels like a bad JFK impersonation.
Yeah, I can see that. Which, I mean, that's kind of Kirk, but still.
Ed Kirk's from Iowa, and I'm sitting going, why am I thinking this guy sounds like he's from Boston? I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know, but I've not seen anything else he's been in. I've not went and watched any of his other work, so I don't know if that's just his natural voice. I don't know if he's...
I'm not the guy who's going to go back and watch Vampire Diaries, and the only reason why I know he's in that is because my wife watched it, so I was like, oh, that's... When she was watching it one day, I was like, oh, that's Kirk! It's kind of weird.
Could you ask her just to pull up one scene just so we can see
if he's wooden? Because it's a teen vampire show, so I'm going to guess he's wooden. Again, to everything we've said, none of what we're complaining about detracts from the fact that these are really good episodes, and the episodes that Kirk is in are good episodes. I feel like I'm spoiled on William Shatner and Chris Pine, and I wish somebody would have. I don't want them to ape Shatner, and Pine didn't ape Shatner. Pine made it his own too. I want somebody who can step into the role of Kirk and, much like Anson Mount did with Pike, command a scene. And I have not seen one scene with this Kirk in both season 1 and season 2 where he commands a scene and says, I am the guy who is going to save the galaxy upteen times. I've not seen him do that yet. And I'm still holding out hope, but right now I'm not sold.
And I will say, for benefit of the doubt and devil's advocate here, is this is also a younger Kirk.
Yes.
Granted ambitious, granted, everything we're going to see from Kirk, but still a younger, maybe more immature Kirk than what we've seen in TOS. So maybe they're planning on having Kirk grow more to that role, and they're showing us intentionally doing this, which is possible.
Well, I mean,
because this is also not the Pike we would have seen in the Cage either.
You mean the Pike saying he's just going to go be a slaver instead of being a captain? That Pike?
That Pike.
I'm gonna go run a slave ship is literally what he says in the Cage.
and what they've said is, I don't think they will go there, for the record, but Akiva Goldsman has said, as they get closer to the TOS time, they're not necessarily being chained to canon. They're playing with it. They're moving things as they need to. But they've said this show will get closer to what TOS was. So I could see some personality shifts happening. I could see some things happening. We also know during Kirk's time on the Farragut from other pieces that he's going to encounter some stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
So, that may be what changes him into the Kirk we know. We just haven't seen it yet.
It could be. And I mean, the novels have dealt with this a lot, with Kirk's experiences on the Farragut and the atrocities that he goes through on that ship, and that kind of builds him too. It's very clear to me that, and I thought this in season 1, and I absolutely feel it in season 2, is they are building themselves a ramp to where if they want to really just legitimately reboot TOS, they are building to that. I don't think it's going to happen right away. I mean, obviously we know Strange New Worlds getting a season 3. It's already started filming. But if and when Anson Mount wants to move on or gets too expensive, they are building a way to where we could do TOS 2.0. And I'm okay with that. I am 100% on board with that. I mean, I think Star Trek Beyond is one of the best Trek films out there. But I need a Kirk who will sit in that center seat, and I'm going to want to root for every week. And I need this guy to step up, and he hasn't yet.
Yeah. And I'm still waiting. I'm hoping, and maybe this is a good segue to what we're looking forward to seeing, is Strange New Worlds has introduced us. We've had, in season 1, Cadet Uhura, who is now Ensign Uhura, which, by the way, I love her.
Oh, she is knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely knocking it out of the park.
And I will say, and I don't think Paramount's going to kill me on this, there is an homage to Nichelle Nichols that, or not even an homage, just a tip of the hat to Nichelle Nichols that is done very, very well. Yes. Very well.
So having that character show up, we've got Kirk now popping in. You've had Spock in the series, obviously.
Which, by the way, I think he's doing a fine job. I loved him in season. I loved him in Discovery. Loved him in season 1. He's very much becoming my second Spock. I think he's right there with Leonard Nimoy in terms.
I will say, as much as I prefer Chris Pine as Kirk, Ethan Peck is Spock.
Yeah, Zachary Quinto did a fine job. I have no problem with Zachary Quinto, but Ethan Peck's doing a better Spock.
Yes. So we've still got a few, and we've got Nurse Chapel.
Yeah.
So we do have Nurse Chapel.
I'm a Nurse Chapel fan. I will say, for those who watch our Grey 17 show, I'm the Nicole in the standing and shipping when it comes to Nurse Chapel. Oh my God, 100%.
So we still have a few characters left to see that would be interesting to show up of the main cast. We heard a voice that sounded a little bit Scottish, but we were told wasn't Scotty in season 1. Bullshit. So, somewhere I think, whether it be this season or next, we're going to see a younger Montgomery Scott pop in somewhere. Along the lines, I would love to see Mbenga meet McCoy.
Yeah, but I completely agree with you. And McCoy, in all the TOS characters, McCoy has always been my favorite. I just loved, I loved everything that McCoy kind of was in TOS and in the movies, and I also think that Carl Urban did a wonderful job, and obviously DeForest Kelley is just a freaking amazing person. So I would love to see that, but I will be the canon Nazi here for a second. We also have that old guy who's Doctor before McCoy. So that's the one I think would be harder to do, because there is actually the reason why they can do M'Benga, and even though he was in TOS, you can pretend like, okay, maybe M'Benga left for a while and came back. But we do have that crotchety old guy. Well, actually, no, never mind. Cage happened before Strange New Worlds. I stand corrected. Okay, bring on McCoy.
So you could get Sulu in here somewhere. I mean, obviously there's going to be younger.
He's going to be working in the bio lab with Sam Kirk.
But it could be, I mean, looking at the timeline wise, Uhura was introduced as a cadet.
Yeah.
You could somewhere see either cadet or even Ensign Sulu or Cadet Chekhov at some. Way too early for Chekhov, I think, timeline wise, but the potential is there to introduce these characters as we go.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the one thing I have really enjoyed that as much as I've bashed on our Kirk friend here, but I have really enjoyed that they have gone to find new people to play this. But in terms of Scotty, I am 100% still down with Simon Pegg coming back. I think he's the one who has nailed it the most, and he's a little older, a little long in the tooth, but we can make him look younger. So I would love to see Simon Pegg show up for an episode or two as Scotty. But either way, I think you're right. Again, I absolutely feel like their long-term strategy on this is we don't have a long-term strategy. We could go either way, it could go any way, but we are absolutely laying the pieces to where if a showrunner came to us and said, I've got a great idea for the 5-year mission of the Enterprise under Kirk, they can set that up and they can do that in season 4, season 5 of this show without much trouble.
I'm just saying, there was a showrunner that pitched something like that who could do fantastic things with this kind of budget.
I do believe so too. I think I know what you're talking about. There was a showrunner who pitched that. I think I know what you're talking about.
But this is the wrong show to talk about that individual.
Well, I don't know. We could maybe do another episode about that individual and his connections with Trek.
So let's kind of wrap up here. We've seen the first 6. There's still 4 to go. We know at least one of the episodes that's coming.
Yes.
Which is the Lower Decks crossover. And we've seen the first images of this. We've seen and there was a teaser that had a little bit of live action that you have Mariner and Boimler on the transporter pad, and Spock actually says, "Live long and prosper, Mr. Boimler."
Yep. Nope. He's I think that's the way to go. I mean, that's they set themselves up well, and I know they didn't plan this, but when they made the Lower Deck characters look like the voice actors, they gave themselves an ability to do this, and so they're doing it, and that makes perfect sense to me.
And that episode is going to be directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Yes.
So, these are 2 different worlds, but you've got a director who can play with that and have a lot of fun.
Paramount, give that man another Trek movie. Just freaking do it. Even if it's on Paramount Plus, give that man a movie. He's good.
Yes. Well, they kind of did. They gave him a few episodes of season 3 of Picard,
basically. But I mean, when's the last movie he's directed? Was it like Thunderbirds or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
I mean, the dude deserves to be a film director. He's very good at it. And the fact that he hasn't gotten many films to do lately is frustrating. Although he's got a wonderful TV directing career, he's doing fine for himself. Yeah. But I want him to do another movie. I really do.
Well, and I think that before I get there, I will say the one thing, and I know it won't happen, but as someone who's watched enough Lower Decks, I would love to see Boimler in the captain's chair just doing the Boimler pose.
Oh, God, no.
It won't happen, but
we some aesthetics can stay on the cartoon and not come over. No, but I bet you what's going to happen, again, as you already said, it's not in the first 6. I think it's all going to be 100% live action, but I bet you there will be an in-credit stinger, I don't know this, that will make the Strange New Worlds crew into the cartoon figures. I think that's how they'll make that crossover, just for fun. But we'll see what happens. I think it's all going to be live action for the main show. It'll be interesting. I do like how the one thing we haven't talked about aesthetically, I love the TOS uniforms. I also like that they've kind of changed things up aesthetically a little bit. You've seen Uhura, and I think you see in the trailer, but if not, it's not a spoiler. You see Uhura and you see Una in these kind of more of a dress uniform. I don't know how to pronounce. But it's got like some black additional pieces to it. I like those. I think those uniforms look great. And the point I'm getting to is the uniforms that we see Boimler and Mariner in. They look really good for live action. They did really good. Unlike Picard season 1 with the ones that didn't fit everybody, these look like uniforms that would be post TNG uniforms getting brought back to TOS. It looks good.
Yeah, it does work really well seeing that. I think in the promos we've also seen there is a new dress uniform.
Yeah. Well, we kind of see it in one of the episodes, I believe, right? Yeah,
we do, but I'm talking in the teasers. I'm just talking about what we can say is out there.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
You look at the episode of TOS where there was a court-martial scene with kind of that dress uniform that had the gold trimming and everything. They did a really nice update of those.
The production crew.
The details.
Yeah, the production crew is knocking it out of the park. They did in season 1 and they continue doing in season 2. There has not been one like set piece, one costume, one effect that has pulled me out of this show. Not one. They've done a very, very good job. It is one of the best looking shows on TV, period. And the quality for being a streaming show and being something that is one of several Trek shows being produced at the same time, the quality of this show is above and beyond all the rest. It also helps that you can actually see what's going on because they use lights. That is nice.
Yeah. So you mentioned, giving Frakes a movie, and I think they're opening the door to that type of possibility. You've got, they talked about after Discovery, there was going to be this Section 31 spinoff show, which we all, well, there you have it. We all questioned and had some concerns with, and now they're saying it is going to be a movie event, a streaming movie basically on Paramount Plus, which I think as a movie, Section 31 could work better than a series.
I just don't care. It's not Sloan. We're moving on. We're done. But yeah, was it?
But it opens that door.
Was it our friends over at Trek Culture who, I think it was them, who they're now calling it the long treks? We had the short treks,
yes,
and now they're saying we're going to have long treks. So
yeah, and I think it opens the door for that. I perfectly agree with them. There are so many different things in Star Trek that could lend themselves to that type of format, where not necessarily enough for a series, but you could do this movie type event with, and you could bring in someone like Frakes to direct some of those, or even LeVar Burton could come in and direct some of those. So there are some options there and some different storylines they could explore, and hopefully this Section 31 one is not the last of these. Mm-hmm. So anything else we want to talk about or say about Strange New Worlds Season 2?
Nope, I can't wait to talk about Episode 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because I have thoughts on all of them, but we're not allowed to say because I don't want to piss off Paramount.
And you realize, though, the same thing is going to happen this time as it did with Picard Season 3.
We're going to sit here for 2 months, and then everyone's going to
We're going to sit here for 2 months, and they're going, damn it, we can't watch the next one.
I know. I want to see an Episode 7. The one thing I will say in the first 6 episodes, you get almost all of the types of episodes you can expect. You get a comedy episode, you get a hard sci-fi episode, you get kind of a darker horror type episode. So I don't know what they're going to do with the last 4 because we've kind of hit all the tropes now. So it'd be interesting to see what the last 4 do. One's going to be a crossover, obviously.
Yeah, one's going to be the crossover. So unless you've got anything else, Scott, I think that is all we have because we can't really say any more, else those lovely snipers from Paramount Plus are going to take us both out if we say any more about this season.
And I want to keep getting streamers, so don't do that.
Yeah, we still like getting those. So we're not going to do that. So thank you for joining us here on Discovering Star Trek, where we are diving into all things Star Trek and going to be going through probably episode by episode of Strange New Worlds, as well as our recaps of older episodes and various things related to Star Trek. Again, I am Blake, and with me has been
Scott.
And remember, live long and prosper, and infinite diversity and infinite combinations. We will be back with more.
And let's boldly get the hell out of here.
Amen.
I love that line.
Before we get any more strange shit thrown at us.
No more strange shit. Just Strange New Worlds. But dad jokes. I got them.